Okay, with winning filmmaker J.A. DellaRipa, another Saturday is the film play at the Female Filmmakers Film Festival. I see that you have your trophy there. How do you like your trophy?
It's beautiful. I was so excited to receive it. It just was like, what is this? This is like one of the beautiful, it has everything that I imagine, my name, the title, and just the camera. It's
Yeah.
it's gorgeous. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for this.
Thank you. Well, it's a great film, so I hope it's doing well in the festival circuit. I want to
It,
talk about the origin story because this seems
yeah.
like this is a great origin story. You work in the industry. Is
Hmm?
this your first film that you directed?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So you wrote a short story, like you could tell the story more obviously, but you wrote this is based on a short story that you wrote a long time ago.
Right. It first started out as a short story, poems, different kind of mediums. And then I did write a longer script that actually about 3 or so years ago, it was in another festival as a longer script. Uh, and over COVID, I
Yeah.
had some time and I shortened it down just quite a bit to one location because I knew at that time I wanted to do it myself, finance it myself, do it myself, get all the crew. So I had originally a couple other locations, and so I just narrowed it down to one and did it myself. So now going through festivals and doing really well. And I just want to say that it's Mental Health Awareness Month in May, and it just fits with the story. So
So obviously this is a story that has stayed with you for a long time,
over
like
40 years. Yes.
over 40 years.
40 years.
Is the
Yeah.
character like a version of you, or
Yes.
like is there something is it autobiographical in nature?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So when I was in middle school and high school and a little bit of college, my mom first was diagnosed with depression, had several suicide attempts. So as I was 12, and it just sort of filtered throughout my life. And so it happened to be every Saturday when my dad would go to work that the kids, me, my sisters would have to watch her, take care of her, and make sure that nothing happened to her. And so it really did affect me because at 12 years old, I really didn't want to be an adult and
Yeah.
watch over my mom. I wanted her to watch over me. And
Yeah.
so it I didn't know how, I mean, I didn't know how much it affected me until I got older.
Sure.
Um, and looking back, I through high school, even though I was still um going through it, I was a good girl. I made sure that I didn't make any more problems for her. I got good grades. I was responsible, but there was that underlining emotional effect that only till later did I realize, okay, I can now deal with this. And so it all came out um, in the short script. I was a film major in college. I went to Cal State Northridge, and I had a little bit of idea of that to write in my script writing class, but it just stayed in the back until COVID when I really sat down and focused. And also being in the industry, I had made some connections and had a really great crew
Sure.
and the one of the main actress I worked with on a TV show. So it was really like the right time, really.
Well, what do you do in the industry? What is your profession?
I'm a studio teacher.
The studio
So I work,
teacher.
yeah. So I work with the young actors and make sure they get their education, uh, make sure the production follows the labor laws of California. And I've been doing about 10 years. Previously, I was a classroom teacher, and then prior to that, I was in publicity. So right out of college, I did work in the industry, but in the administration side.
So is a child actor like working on a set? I don't know if it's a television, movies, do you work on everything?
Everything, yeah, yeah,
Okay. I
commercials, everything.
I remember working on a film called it was like Mom's Got a Date with a Vampire way back when. And basically the all the kids, there were kids following their mom on a date. And so there was all the middle space in the middle of the night. And I just remember talking to the teacher, and she was like, these kids are not listening to me. They're like they don't care. And it's like they're all like 10-year-old kids and they're like having a blast on a movie set, right?
Oh yes, it's a
Yeah.
definitely different feel than when in the classroom with kids not listening to you.
Yeah.
But it was really a blend because I wasn't really happy doing what I was doing prior. I went to teaching, and my old boss in the studios had said, "Why didn't you think about blending these two worlds together?" I didn't even know that there was such a studio teacher position, and
Yeah.
so got my licensing. It took a while, and it really does hold both of my interests. But this also does too. I want to sort of gear out from that position
Yeah.
and go back to my first love, which is a film major, and to make my own content. And I think teaching has a lot to do with my skill as a director, because it's like in a classroom, you have all these different hats and you have to
Yeah.
direct different 38 kids. And I felt that way, even though it's not, a big set, just, being the leader and the voice of that environment.
That's
So,
really cool. Like it's almost like I don't like these meta films where like a film within a film. Some most of them really don't work, but that's my
yeah.
subjective opinion. But that's a great idea for a film. The studio teacher, like
Right.
teaching the child actors, right?
Right, being the director of them. And
Yeah.
we'll see. Maybe
No,
that's
I'm
the
just
next.
saying. I'm just like thinking on the spot. Okay, so basically after all these years, like not that long, but after all these years, I'm assuming it must have been like a little bit scary to like finally direct this film for the first like
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. I was apprehensive as to what the what my own skill was as a director, even though
Mhm.
again, from the hat of the teacher and directing, and to organize, I had that down. And I was in teaching for 15 years. So I got that. But being on the set for 10 years now as a student teacher, I was in the back of the directors. I worked on
Yeah,
big, short, small, so I really had a front row to
yeah.
they did and what the environment was like.
Mhm.
And and probably because it did prepare me for my own day, even though I was still very nervous. But being that I knew my crew, I think three people I did not know, it was like a family friend event. So I didn't feel as nervous because I
Yeah.
did have my close, friends and family help me. Maybe it would be different in something else in a different set that I don't know the crew, which as a student teacher in any kind of crew in the industry, you go on to the project pretty much not knowing anyone, at least for us,
Right.
because we're hired that pretty much that same day. I mean, the day before we go in and we don't know anyone. And it really is, getting to know everyone and making those connections right away. So I did feel confident in that. I did not know Rachel, the actress who played the mom, but we had a table read and we had rehearsal a week or two before. So,
Okay.
but she was completely new.
So just to go back to this to finish what you were saying, like when you're working on set, when you're on set a lot, you're kind of like a sponge. You're seeing it's a machine. There's a certain like you can go on different sets, but it's like there's a certain everybody's got the positions. There's a certain crew. It's like,
Yeah,
and then the director kind of sets a tone, but with that, there's a certain structure that's in place, I guess, in all these film sets.
absolutely. It's like a dance. Everyone has their position,
Yeah,
everybody knows their boundaries and the lines and their jobs. And if it's off, then you can feel it. If it's disorganized, you can feel it. I
yeah,
know that for us, studio teaching, and especially with the children, because by different ages, they can only work a certain amount of hours. Time is of the essence,
yes,
not just with money, but
especially with
also,
child actors. Yeah,
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 exactly. Child actors. So,
because they what is the rule now? They can only work 8 hours a day, or
well, depending on their age,
yeah,
it will be for the little ones, and we do 15-day-old babies. They can only do 20 minutes, versus all the way up to the 16, 17-year-olds who can work as long as a 10 and a half hour day.
okay, gotcha.
So it's between 8 and a half, 6 and a half, 9 and a half.
Okay, So great film, by the way. Okay, let's like obviously you know the story, you have perspective, but there's a certain distance, which is great. The biggest thing that stands out is the production design and the authenticity of the setting. It's so it's just so real. And it's like I'm only watching it through second and third viewing where I'm like I'm really appreciating it because
Yeah.
it's like it's so real. And so I want to ask you about like the production design, finding the main location because it I don't know like what era are we in the film?
I was present day, even though it took place in the 80s.
Yeah.
So we're talking 83, 82, 83. But I had that decision between not having to find the 80s video cassettes or the cuts and things. So being that I had to decide between a time period, I just did it present day. So
But it kind of has that suburban like almost like timeless feel to it in a sense, right?
I'm so glad you said that
Yeah,
because look at where we're happening now, mental health and children struggling, not just, I mean, that was what I went through with my mom, but it's now happening because everyone's, it's coming out there in the open. So I'm glad it's timeless in the way that you really can't tell because whether it was 40 something years ago for myself versus somebody struggling
yeah.
today with that's great that it read that way.
There literally is a white picket fence in your film, so that's the environment that we're in, right? So,
Yes, yes. And the location's my home, so,
oh, is it okay? Because
yeah,
it's a
yeah.
fantastic location. Yeah, yeah,
Thanks. I had to, cut corners, but that's for me is like anything that we needed, I had. And we filmed 2 days, on the weekend, and
yeah,
it was you know, we had prepped for 3 months with my DP and my mentor who I worked with. He was a director or assistant director in the business for over 30 something years. So I worked on some Nickelodeon shows with him. So he really stepped in and was my mentor as well, and just trying to, navigate the schedules and what was best. And we just, the three of us, CP, myself, and my mentor, just honed in because with 2 days, and because I knew time is of the essence with our child actor, it was just had to be, so organized. And I think that's the best. It was well run in terms of what I've heard from my crew that day. It was like, yeah, got everything done on time. The only thing, because I was wearing different hats, I did have a little snafu, which I would have liked the ending to have more of a dusk than a night, but we were running against the the we
gotcha.
shot in December, so we shot in December, so yeah.
Yeah, but it's a full day. It kind of works. Like it starts
Okay.
in the morning and it ends in the
Yeah,
nighttime, so
yeah,
it
one
does
day.
work. It's just you talking about struggle the like setting the like because it's a really well photographed film too. So did you with your DP did you like storyboard like you were very obviously you're very organized. Like how was your preparation? Storyboards like shot lists like
Yeah, everything. We Joe Passarelli is excellent. Just he's a husband of a coworker of mine who's also a studio teacher. So we actually planned it, storyboard. We filmed a rehearsal. I was one character, and then Sean, my mentor, was the other. And we all three of us, every time we got together as we could, we mapped it out in my house, and all the shots and the movements and where I wanted the cameras, because my house is a bit small, but still it worked. And we
yeah.
just planned everything out. We had a shot list. We exactly, knew exactly what we needed. I had it all in my head, and I had done my own drawings, and it was really neat one day when I had did my storyboard for one of the scenes, the scene where Joyce is putting on her tennis shoes about to go out, and she sort of hesitates. Do I need to, can I go out? Do I need to, to stay here with mom? And it was exciting because what was in my head that I had on a piece of paper Joe had said, "Why don't we do this kind of shot?" And I was like blown away because I hadn't talked to him about it yet. And I said, "Look at what I just what I just drew last night." And so I just knew we were both, on the same vision, and
Yeah.
it was really great.
Yeah, it's but well the claustrophobic, like it's the nature of the house is it works for the film too, right? Like
Yeah,
thematically for yeah.
exactly, because she's stuck between
Yeah.
these two worlds.
And the
And
color of the house works. Kind of like
thank you.
yellow. Yeah.
My
Yeah.
yellow throughout the whole house, which is like, it's sort of ironic because it's not a happy house. It's, yellow is associated with happiness and sunlight, which it's not in her environment, and she's stuck. So being a small house, it's all she can walk, as the camera's, following her once she gets home back into the kitchen, it really is just a short walk to all these different, rooms, but there's no privacy and everything's very close, and she's feeling suffocated. And my um the biggest moment I felt in trying to portray the two worlds was this closeness and this claustrophobic in the house versus when she goes out to play with
Yeah.
her crush, her neighbor Tommy, that she, has a secret crush with, and going back and forth. And my editor was wonderful, Natasha, and she, with these two worlds blending together, um, overlapping, is what the main, part of the film is. So having those two worlds collide and having Joyce be out there when really internally she's in this very depressed,
Yeah.
internal struggle with her mom and being at home.
So okay, so your child actor with Scarlett, right?
Carla Ebenati, yes.
Quite the journey, quite the arc in the film, right? Like from beginning, first scene to last scene. Like, where did you find her? She's fantastic.
Yeah, she's wonderful. And I worked with her as a studio teacher
Okay.
about 2019. She was a guest star. She was only 8. So I had worked with her many years ago and on a TV show, and I hadn't seen her since. However, she has other sisters in her family that work in the business, and so I had seen her mom on different things throughout the past years. And so I said, "Well, what's Scarlett doing? What's she up to?" And it just was the right timing. So I had already, I knew the family, and she just brought, like you were saying, the authenticity of the emotion was, um I was just blown away. I talk about not needing too much of direction. This is what I was feeling at your age with this, and she
Yeah.
just went with it. She just had this subtle innocence, which is exactly what, a 12-year-old would feel, is like you're still struggling between the innocent childhood versus being the adult in taking care of someone who, is struggling mentally.
All right. So obviously, you know child actors probably better than anyone. So I'm curious about like the level of emotional maturity that like I'm sure everyone's different, right? Because they kind of say that you can't really direct a child actor, right? But I guess at a certain age, but they must have this deep emotional maturity that's beyond their years, one would assume.
Right. She was 12 too. It was a couple
Yeah.
years ago when I did this. And so she was the exact age. And when I gave the script to her mother, I said, it's about this, you know, issue, and it's about suicide, and you know, I'm okay if she's not ready. She read it. She's like, she wants to do it. She loves it, and I was just like, okay. So she is very wise. She's just a natural talent. When I saw her on the TV show that I was working on, even at 8, she had the comedic, wit, and just the professionalism of a child actor. So I knew then at 8, and now I'd seen her at 12, and there was no doubt. So I'm
You want to
really,
know a funny coincidence that she was in a film called Hey Alexis that we showed at our
really,
festival a couple years ago.
goodness, I have to ask her about that.
Yeah.
Hey, Alexis.
Hey
Well,
Alexa, sorry, hey Alexa, sorry, hey Alexa.
okay.
It's like a play, it's like a play on this. Like people are asking Alexa, like what's the country or whatever, and then it's like Alexis is in this room, and she's like, oh, what's the capital of South Africa, and she has to go find it, and it's
Oh
like,
my goodness.
and then
Oh,
she's one of the kids who's asking the questions. Yeah,
I will ask her about that. I did
yeah.
not know. I didn't see all her resume, but yes, that
So that's the
was an
second time. Yeah,
exciting, yeah, second
yeah.
time. And same with Rachel Alec. I mean, she was in my short film, and when I went to another festival, she was in that other film that
Well,
was played
yeah,
in the same film. I'm like,
yeah.
you're a busy one, which is great. They're working, they're wonderful. The kindest people to work with is both of those. So I was just, it made my life and my job, and I was so happy to find Rachel. I just found her, on Breakdown, so it just worked out, and they looked the same. So that was really,
They look, I was going to get
like
to that.
mother
That
and
was like on
daughter.
my notes. They look like mother daughter.
Yeah,
It's that fine, it's that balance because when you're a child actor, obviously the parents are making the choice of them
yeah,
acting, right? I know the kids like, oh, I want to be an actor, but the parents are making the choice, right? So for the
correct. Yeah.
so it's an interesting kind of balance where like of like, do they really want to be there? I guess, but I you know what I'm trying to say? It's like
Absolutely, because they're, agendas, moms, dads, whatever, whoever
you
wants
don't have to get
this
into
for their
specifics,
child.
but I'm sure you've met some crazy parents. Let's put it that way, right?
Well, there's crazy people in the world everywhere. But being that said, the Tommy is my son. So
Oh, okay.
the boy who plays Tommy was a last minute casting, but he did a great job. He just sort of stepped up to the plate and handled it well. We had a changing casting for
Yeah,
different reasons, and he has a background in singing and dance and musicals in his high school, so it wasn't too far from
yeah.
what he likes to do, but that was his first time in front of a camera, and I think it worked. Actually, again, everything happens for a reason. The first casting would probably, looking back, not have been really authentic because it was the same age was the original idea, but my son James, he was a little bit older than
Yeah.
Scarlett, and it worked as far as, having the crush on the older boy.
But he likes her too. Like, well, it seemed like, but it's interesting that that's your son because it's almost like full circle in a sense where like she's playing a version of you as a
Right.
child, and now your son's playing the one that your version of you has a crush on.
You're right. Yeah. How it happens again. So I mean, it
Yeah.
happens for a
Freud would
reason.
have some conversation about that, I guess, right? So
Yeah.
but okay, great shot at the beginning of the film where like where you show like it's all from her, everything's from her point of view, right?
Yes.
Except for the when the mom's spying on the relationship. But it's like
Right.
great shot where like it's across the street. She's like she's looking forward to it. She wakes up and she's you can almost like without even saying anything, she's looking forward to seeing him, I guess, right? When she pops out
Right.
the
When
window.
sits down and looks, in the
Yeah.
curtains, and she's just thinking, is it going to be the day? And hence another Saturday, because this is sort of her routine,
Yeah.
that every Saturday, this is her obligation, her duty to be home. And yet she's always wanting to, go out. So this happens to be the day, but that's the fear. The fear is like, what do I do? Do I choose between what I want to do and be a kid and have fun with my crush? But what about mom? And she just takes that risk, that one, she has that hesitation.
Yeah. You
When,
can't blame her. You don't, the audience understands and the audience wants her to, it's not like she's going to the store or the mall with them. She's going
yeah,
across
right,
the street, right?
right. She feels safe that I can take
There's
him
a
to do.
metaphor to that. She's just going across the street, right? So
Yeah, right. And
yeah,
comes back, and what she fears will happened, but that's the risk. So Yeah, I'm so glad that you saw those messages and those moments, because that was,
Yeah.
what I was going for. The ending, what do you think about the ending?
No, I want to I'll get to that in a second because then the shot of the mom, like you really hold it on the mom,
Oh, right.
um, when she's observing them, right? And it's
Yes.
like, and then she does what she does. I don't want to give too much away, but basically she does what she does, and it's like, but then it's because she's sick, so I don't want to have there's also that kind of impression that she's jealous of her daughter, or she's, you know what I mean? But I'm not saying it's true, but I'm just saying there's an impression that, well, why would she do what she does when she just sees this beautiful moment her daughter's having, right?
Right. And that's, I think, the complexity of the struggle of
Yeah,
mental illness. I know, to go back to the personal story of my mom, at that age, if I had a test that I'm studying for and then this happened, it's like, well, didn't, what it felt, as young as I was, not understanding that at that time, it felt selfish. I now know, the struggle now of people who have depression and suicide attempts. But at that young, innocent age, I was like, how could you do this? It was all about, you're my mom. Why did you do this? It was a lot of
yeah,
anger, a lot of resentment, not understanding. And yeah, at some point, I'm like, you doing this on purpose? You're not thinking of me. You're thinking all of yourself. And all this would have affected my studying for my test as I got into high school. So it was that was building up, and not understanding until I was older that in that moment, they don't think about anything else. They think of relief. It's a crying out for their own pain and their own suffering. So I I can see why it might have looked like that, but in that situation, it's all about her relief and her um, pain, the mom. So I didn't think that she was doing anything, out of jealousy. It's just like, oh, I'm glad my daughter's having, some
yeah.
fun. I'm not. I have to relieve my pain, and I'm going to do it with this attempt. So,
Yeah, no, no, I'm just saying, that's what I'm saying. It's like that's the because if you like, it's sort of, it's she's not like she's not doing anything mean. She's not being mean, and it's
right.
like it just that's the complexity. There's like obviously it's like a cliche for me to even say this, but there's a bigger story here, right? Like it's
Oh,
like you'd love to see like a. Do you have like an idea for like a feature for this?
I do. I do have an expansion of the backstory of the
Yeah,
mom's, where it all comes from, and I'm thinking about that. I that was what I was first writing back in film school for my
yeah,
script writing, and it was about 30 page. I have to revisit that because I do think that this is not yet done in terms of the story and the connections and the different stories of Joyce and even Tommy, and to expand it. So yes, I'm thinking of that. I have something else that I'm doing right now, which is a documentary about my dad. So I have
oh great.
lots of ideas in my head.
It goes to the mom to the dad. You're
Mom and dad has to have their stories. Yes.
always there. Okay, so the ending with the cigarette, it's I'd be like it's did you was a cigarette always like you could have done drugs, you could have done drink alcohol, is like did you think about how are you going to portray that?
Yeah, I left it like that because of that kind of full circle, that sort of generational trauma, and would it repeat itself? And yet it's not answered. So I'm hoping the audience on purpose will make their own decisions on what's going to happen to her later in life. Is that going to be something that's going to be the same cycle, like her mom, or is she going to go a different path, and she could be, okay? There are children who have traumatic experiences in their family, but that necessarily doesn't mean that they're going to be,
Yeah.
you know, down a darker path or the same path. It might be someone who's, going to be resilient. So I left up to the audience.
No, but I'm curious about the choice of the cigarette, just because that's her
The
mom was smoking.
cigarette was because she was
Yeah.
smoking, and that was,
Yeah.
yeah. So what we had there was what we had. I could have decided maybe on some other, but now that I think about it, the it's assumed that the bag of drugs are not there, and that was the only thing that's
Yeah.
left, on the table.
Gotcha.
Oh
No, but
yeah,
it's almost like a healing device.
alcohol.
It's like, yeah, alcohol. It's like kind of like it's like medicating the wounds, I guess, right?
Yes,
Self-medicating the wound,
right.
right?
I think because my mom was a smoker, that was like the natural thing that I went to.
Yeah.
I just associated, and I grew up in the 70s where you're sitting, the mom's sitting and she's smoking. We had,
Yeah.
tons were sitting on the lap of the mom, and that was her life was just a, coffee and cigarettes. So it really was modeling my mother, and she played it like my mom because it was exactly, her everyday
Yeah.
situation. And, smoking for my mom's 81. So since she was,
Oh,
16 in
your
the
your
50s,
mom, your mom's still alive?
she's still alive and she's doing well. Unfortunately, she has dementia, but with dementia, she now ironically forgot that she was a smoker. So she doesn't smoke anymore. But through my entire life, and especially during that
Yeah.
period, that's all she had was that pot of coffee and cigarettes.
And she's 81. Like,
Yeah, she's
yeah, that's
81.
impressive. Yeah. No, from that standpoint, right? So like,
Yes.
yeah. So then the like I said, we come full circle and like you just feel for this character. You feel for her, like you just because she has every right to go across the street, right? She has every right to live her life,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
and then when the AMTs comes up, it's like it's great acting on her part because it's not over the top. It's not like she's not screaming. She's just it's almost like she's dealing with the consequences and there's that guilt, right? But it's not nothing said. It's just that you can feel it on her face, right? So
Yeah, the reaction. It's that repression. It's like that turning off in order to get through. At least that's how I felt too. But she played it exactly. In order to get through that, you have to sort of numb. You're numbing yourself. You're suppressing all that
yeah,
kind of emotion because she has to take care of the call and she has to tell dad, she has to be the strong one, even though that will probably come later in her breakdown. But if I had her, break down then, nothing will get done. She won't take care of her. She's the adult. She's not going to be
yeah,
responsible to take her mom, and call the ENT. So it's just really her, and she played it well where it was, like you said, this kind of stoic innocence and numbness to get through that shock, that pain. But yet, this is a title Another Saturday. So it's nothing that she's not familiar
yeah.
with either, that hasn't happened before.
All right. So the film shot, you're going into editing. Like, how are you feeling about like so far? Like, you're obviously the magic will happen in the editing room. And
Right.
so, are you feeling good about your footage? Like,
Yes, I was feeling great. I was so happy with what I got. There was one thing I wish I had more time. Again, back to time.
sure,
I wish I had a little bit more time with the scene with Tommy and some basketball shots, but that was all improvised. So they just had met that one day, and I said, you guys are first meeting, and then naturally, what would you talk about? Because even though they're neighbors, she's not really had a moment with her crush, and so they're getting to know each other um, more intimately. So that was all improvised, and I wanted a little bit more uh, personalized, I guess, a little bit more different angles on that.
yeah,
But we ran up against time, but I, from my shot list, got everything that I would have liked to.
yeah.
And it was I was very excited to see what the editor was going to do. And she's wonderful because some things that the overlapping of the dialogue and cutting it down to, it was a little bit longer, about 15, we're now at 13, but she really, with the overlapping of the voiceover on top of the picture was just, it worked. To the one, when she comes into the door from her day and he says, "Oh, this is great." Again, improvise. So she
Yeah.
just took that improvised conversation and put it over. And it actually, that was the one line. Had I wrote that, I did not. They improvised that. It worked beautifully for that scene. So it was just these like little gems of surprise that the editor, Natasha, cut it so beautifully. So and so succinctly, the for Natasha and I to decide in the editing room which long pauses do we want here, which one should be shortened. That was just her and I together, and it was great.
And then the sound design and music. Tell me about that experience.
Right. The sound design, Matthew, our composer, Chris Green. I had talked with the composer. I gave him the what's the word? The first cut of the film that Natasha and I did. And to place it, I gave her tip music that I wanted to feel in these moments, in these scenes. So she just used what I gave her and placed them. And but when I talked to the composer, I said, do whatever you need, to do. This is just something that I would like as far as a mood. But he was so great. He picked up all of the emotional moments, especially in that I was talking about that cutting between the outside and the inside, and having that beautiful, like angelic, I felt music really bridge those two worlds. And so he was awesome. I'm so happy. And then the sound was Matthew, did the sound of, as far as the I don't know, the idea of the low points of, which was hard. I wouldn't say hard, I don't really know, but he did beautifully, where the outside, we have their
Yeah.
voices over as she's in her moment, the mom's in her moment. So having that design was really important to give him the space to design, like, well, we still want to hear what's happening outside, because technically she can't hear them. They're across the street, but the two worlds, the blending of the two worlds is what I wanted to show. Both of those worlds are colliding with the music. So we have the music and the voices of the kids underneath all of that
Yeah.
in the climax.
Yeah, it's great. And so the film is done. How are you feeling? You must be feeling like amazing.
I was on top top of the
Yeah.
world. I was just like, yes, this is not only the story I wanted to find. It felt cathartic. First of all,
Yeah.
it felt I needed, after 40 something years, to get this off, but also I felt very empowered. I did something that I was, quite frankly, a bit, like you were saying in the beginning, fearful, nervous, not
Mhm.
sure that I could, command the story and do its justice for myself, and also for my mom, and then anyone else who has this struggle right now in their own family. So, but I felt great. I felt that whatever I did, it was also because all of the people, Joe, the DP, my mentor, everyone, the actresses, they all were phenomenal. And it just, I was happy because I saw it. I saw it when we were filming, how beautiful, and the moments in the monitor that I knew that I got the story that I wanted to tell because of them.
And now that you're on the festival circuit, this is the first time, or you must be like
Yeah.
I'm assuming you've attended some festivals and like you're there. Like, how's the feeling?
Feeling great. I am excited to go to the ones that I can go to.
Yeah,
I have one coming up in Hollywood on Saturday,
it's amazing.
and it it's really great to share the story because on the first one that I was invited to in February, you present, you don't know anyone, all the films are new. You go, you have the networking, and this woman came up and uh, said to me, "I really liked your film because that was my story with my mom." And unfortunately, her mom didn't survive.
Yeah,
And she asked, "Did your mom survive?" I said, "Yes, I'm so sorry." It just was like seeing the reaction to people who said that's my story or that's what I knew or it happened to me. It just was like, oh, I'm I'm glad to talk about it. It is like you're not alone if this has happened because I was saying to one of the festivals when I was asked about why did you feel so strongly about the story? I said, because I felt so ashamed. I felt so ashamed as a child and embarrassed once, like my classmates or
sure.
my
Yeah,
neighbors would find out, or the scene in my mind, of course, in reality, visibly, when somebody is in crisis and the EMTs goes to your house, like all the neighbors, and there's someone,
yeah.
riding a bike across, from your house, and you have this going on. So it was really coming from that feeling of embarrassment and guilt and all those together to now saying, well, there's nothing to be ashamed about. This is a mental health awareness month is May, and this is something that happens, and you can get help. And if you are struggling with suicide, there's um, organizations and resources out there. And back then in 84, 82, it was a hush. Nobody wanted to know about that. And,
Right.
and they were still, figuring out the resources and the medicines. And so it was really a,
Yeah.
a different time.
Yeah, but that said, it could be a lot better. It's good. It's, of course, it's better than it is then, but it could be a lot better even now too,
Oh,
right?
yes.
Yeah,
There's a lot of work, definitely. Now
yeah,
we have, the teenagers, which I hear more about them really about, well, probably about a lot of people that's across the board, but back in 82, I really didn't hear too much about teenage anxiety and teenage suicide and depression.
yeah.
And of course, we didn't have social media, so we didn't have that, pressure. So definitely there needs to be a lot more to be done, and hopefully it will continue because now it touches everyone.
So you said you had siblings. Did they have your siblings watch the film?
Mhm. Right. Yes. My sister worked on it. My
Oh, she
older
worked
sister,
on it.
well, she was the caterer.
Okay.
So
Oh, okay. She was around. Okay, that's
she
amazing.
was
Okay.
around. I'm a twin, so my
Oh,
twin and I, that being the origin story, is one of the Saturdays we're always together. Of
yeah,
course, we're young, but in high school, always together. So my two older sisters weren't around as much since they were out working and they were older, but it was my sister and I, Jennifer and I, that really had that obligation,
gotcha.
the duty to take care of mom. So yeah, she was around and she was so happy and so proud. And she's like, this is great that you're getting this, getting this done and getting it out there. So the other two sisters loved it. They're just proud that I had all the friends and family connections and resources
Yeah.
to do it. So
Oh, you're telling this great story. And so I've
thank
had you on for a long time, but before I leave you, I gotta ask you, um, you said in the blog interview that the film you watched the most times in your life. Do you remember what you said?
the outsiders.
So I have an
That's
older sister. I have
coming.
an older sister, and so I grew up in the 80s. So I have an older sister, and she watched that film so many times. Obviously, there was like Tom Cruise and Rob Lowe and Patrick Swayze. There was, I guess, some attractive males in the film, right?
Yes.
And she was and I saw that movie like maybe 40 times in my life, right? And then I started picking it apart. I think that's what I'm even doing now, because it's like I was like 8, 7, 8 years old watching the film, and then you're like, oh, okay, there's a continuity error there because you're watching it like the 20th time, right? So it's like,
Yeah.
and then you're feeling the story structure. And then I didn't read the book, and then I went back and read the book, and it was almost like my film school in a sense, like that Outsiders, it was just like a random thing that happened, right? So
Absolutely. And that was 83. So it was right around the time in which this was happening in my
yeah,
family. And that connection between the outsiders and the outcasts, or the ones that are having struggles,
yeah,
versus, oh,
the
nobody is
greasers
like
and the
this.
socials,
The
right?
Greases and the Socias,
Yeah,
and, people who don't have struggles, like my
yeah,
mom's having, they are having the charmed life. Well, that just really resonated, because I was right there, in 82 and 83 when it came out. We read the book in seventh grade. I read the book in seventh grade. So it's carried me through, and I've seen it many times. And as an English teacher, when I was in the classroom, I taught it.
they
So,
still teaching that book.
oh yes, yeah, yeah.
Wow.
It's a mandatory reading nowadays, and I'm a big fan. I went to the Outsiders House Museum in Tulsa. I've gone to
Oh,
the
wow. Okay.
and the meet and greets, and just because
So,
it's really a universal message in that book.
Francis Ford Coppola directs the film. Obviously,
Right.
I
You
have
just
no
got to,
context who he is, right? So then, obviously, he's a very famous director, and the people who became famous from that film, right? Like just not from that film, but like who've had outstanding careers, like it's kind of amazing, right? For Ralph Macchio, I
yeah.
mentioned Tom Cruise, even Diane Lane was in it, right?
Right.
So
Right. I think the only two that were established at that time in 83 was Matt Dillon and Diane Lane. They had previous, big time
they did
movies
the
called
Rumblefish, right?
Underground
Yeah.
afterward. Yeah. And
Oh, was that
Tex.
afterwards? Okay.
Right. So all the first one was, well,
Yeah.
maybe Tex was before, I'm not quite sure, but she wrote the four major ones. That was in This Is Now, Tex, Rumblefish, and The Outsiders. And Matt Dillon was in uh three of them, three of
Yeah.
her S. Gittins books. So,
Yeah.
but those were the only two main ones. And everyone else that you mentioned were, I won't say newbies, but they were not known until The Outsiders came out. So
Yeah.
yeah, I could talk all day about the Outsiders. I could talk all
No, I
day.
haven't seen it in a long time. And yeah, and Emilio Estevez, right? Yeah, you
Right.
said Matt Dillon, right? So
And also the musical. I saw the musical before it went to Broadway, because it was out here at La Jolla
okay.
Playhouse last March. So I saw that, and I'm like, how are they going to do this in a musical? That's not right. And it was phenomenal. So
Do it for
it,
Johnny. Do it for
yeah,
Johnny.
do
Yeah.
it for Johnny. And thank God it won the Broadway, the Tony.
Yeah.
So
The
yeah.
Rumble and everything, right? So yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. I have a whole big t-shirt collection.
So there's a Rob Lowe wrote a book, and he has a huge like couple chapters about the process of making that
Oh,
film. It's a really interesting read. Yeah.
gotta read that. That's
Yeah,
one
like
thing I
how
want.
Coppola brought in all these actors and like kind of
Yeah,
like a cattle call, right? So and then there's different versions of the film, right?
right. There's one that he did after, where he wanted to use his own music because his dad, Carmine, had done the original, which is
Yeah.
I love, but he wanted to do a kind of a 50s, and I personally don't like that. I'm just back to the original, but I thought that it took me out of the story. But he wanted to do it years later, and he's the director, so he did it. But there's different longer versions of that really follow the book. But the one that came out in the original theater is not the long version. It really had to, cut out some scenes to make
Yeah,
it
and Rob Lowe's still mad to this day. So yeah,
really, yeah.
yeah.
They cut
Because
those
he
things
said
out.
they cut my role, right? So
That's
Soda Pop
that's
did, right?
right.
He
That's
was a
right.
bigger
But
role in the book.
did
Yeah.
he did, and he gets it. The longer version, I have that too, and he's right. He did a great job crying at the park. So
Yeah, he did because he took off. Yeah, that's what he's like. That's my
right.
scene. They cut my
That's it.
scene, right?
Yep.
And then he spent like 20 years like thinking he did a bad job. because like he never saw it. Then he finally saw the scene. He's like, wait a minute, I did a great job.
Yeah,
Like,
that's right.
yeah. So, anyways, I just wanted to ask you about that
Oh yeah.
because it was like I said, it was not, it's not my favorite movie or anything, but just I just saw it so much because my sister and her friends were obsessed with this
Oh,
film, right? So obsessed, like, because all the boys, right? So
well, that's right. And it was a good read too. But then tell your sister, and she would know this. Just tell her hi and stay gold for me, and she'll know
they
what I
go.
mean. Stay gold.
And the funny thing was is that all the girls they liked C. Thomas Howell the most, and he's the
I know.
one who was probably the least famous of the whole cast, right? So.
That's right. But now now he's getting there. He's in Reagan. He's in uh, Reaper.
Oh,
He's
okay. He's
he's
a working actor. He's
still
still
there.
doing well.
Yeah, he's still doing well. Yeah, and he has a foundation, the Stay Gold Foundation. So he's bringing literacy and talking about that to schools. So that's really a great thing that I really appreciate. And we'll
All right.
see.
On that note, I've had you for a long time. I really appreciate it.
I love
Great
it.
film. Wish you the best of success. Let's talk again when you make your next film.
Thank you, Matthew. I
And
sure
keep
will.
making movies.
I will.
All right.